Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alecia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is
Twisted and Uncorked.
I was doing this, I was doing that. It was a very good day. I picked up the kids. I made dinner, I think. Did I make dinner yesterday? Pretty sure I did. Anyway, and then when Jesse got home, we went for a walk. And then I was like, oh shit, I didn't get wine yet. But it's fine. I have plenty of time. It's no big deal. We got home from our walk. I went down to the grocery store and they didn't have it. So then I went to the liquor store and they didn't have it. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I am the one who found this wine. How can I not find it now? This is ridiculous. And I asked the guy in the liquor store. I also had to get liquor, triple sec, so that was fine. Anyway, I had to go in there. But I asked the guy, I was like, hey, do you have this wine? He was like, I don't know. You got to ask my dad. He knows all the things. So I went to ask his dad. He was like, I think we do. And we looked over there. He's like, I don't know. I thought we did. I can't find it. And I was like, okay, whatever. So when I was checking out, I checked out with triple sec. And the guy at the register who I asked originally, who didn't know, was like, this doesn't look like what you showed me. And I was like, yeah, no, you guys didn't have it. And he was like, so instead of wine, you got liquor? And I was like, well, I'm making a sangria. And he's like, well, we have pre-bottled sangria back there. And I was like, I know, but like, I'm making a specific sangria. And he's like, well, we have a bunch of wine back there. And I'm like, oh. And this whole time I was listening to Wine and Crime in my headset. So I'm like, stop fucking talking to me. I'm listening.
I'm trying to listen to my podcast.
And I was like, look, so me and my friend who's Canadian, we do this every week. We get a specific wine, and Canada doesn't have all the same wines as Tennessee does. So like, I'm looking for the specific one for this week. Next week, I'll try a different one. Maybe I'll be back in here and get one from here. And he was like, is she doesn't like any of these? Is she here? And I was like, no, she's in Canada. We're doing this on Zoom. And he's like, so you just Zoom together and come up with sangria recipes? And I'm like, well, we make a podcast.
Sir.
And I was
no
like,
further questions.
Like, we do it for the podcast. And he was like, how did you meet her if she's in Canada? And I was like, oh my fucking God. I had a podcast. She had a podcast. We met. Now we have our own podcast. And he's like, oh, what's your podcast about? And I was like, what the fuck is happening? I was like,
was he like into you?
I don't know. He spoke broken English. But he's like, oh, what's the podcast? And I was like, it's a true crime podcast. And he's like, true? And I was like, true crime? Like murder? And he like started backing up. And I was like, we just talk about murder. We don't murder people. And he's like, so like, how do you find that? And I was like, documentaries. Do you have Netflix? And he's like, yeah, I have Netflix. And I was like, well, there's a documentary on there called Cecil Hotel. It's super creepy. We just watched it, and then we talked about it while we made our sangrias and drank them. And he was like, oh, I have a recommendation. And I was like, okay, what is it? And he was like, you should talk about Jeffrey Epstein. He is very crazy, man. And I was like, oh yeah, he is. He's like,
that's so cute.
He was like, he is very strong. And I was like, he is very powerful. And he was like, powerful, that's the word I meant. And I was like, yeah, he is. I have to go though. Like, I have to go. Thank you.
I was already behind on my life before this conversation started.
So annoyed, but also like, it was nice.
Like adorable.
Yeah. I was like, Jesus, like any other day.
I don't know what that was. It's terrifying.
You have fun facts?
I do have well, you know what? I'm trying to decide. So
okay,
you tell me yours.
Okay. So the thing that I learned this past week was actually something that I learned that I was telling people wrong. So okay, let me get into the whole story, right? We were at Disney, and in Animal Kingdom there's a ride called It's a Bug's Life. And it's not really a ride, it's like an event, it's an attraction. And you go in and sit down.
That movie is so cute, by the way.
Yeah. You go in and you sit down, and the ant guy comes out, and he's like telling you all about how bugs are good for the planet, and people and bugs need to work together, blah, blah, blah. It's awesome. It's adorable. It's like you wear 3D glasses and bees come flying at you and this and that.
Nope.
And
Goodbye.
the spiders come from down from the ceilings.
It sounds like a nightmare.
These are the parts where the bad guy, the grasshopper guy, the bad guy comes out and he's like, my bugs are going to get you. And yeah.
Oh, it's cartoon bugs.
Yes.
Right. It's the ants' life care. Okay,
Yeah.
we're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
And, well, at the very end, there's a part where a stink bug comes out and they, like, spray stink at you. It smells really bad. Like, it's crazy
is it like 40
attraction.
or whatever that's called?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has all of the things. And at the very, very end, he's like, all right, so first let all the cockroaches out. Please stay seated so they can get out safely. And you feel these things moving under your butt. It's so disgusting. Anyways, all of that to say, while we were on that ride, my brother said something to my daughter about how, do you know that there are millions of ants in the world or something? And I was like, well, do you know that the weight of all ants combined is more than the weight of all humans combined? There are so many ants in the world that they outweigh humans. And I learned that information, I believe, from Tennish podcast, but I could be wrong. I don't want to say that they're wrong, so I don't know if that's true. But I looked it up because I was like, let me make sure that's right. And it's not. So
what's the actual statistic?
They think that it was correct in the 1700s when there was less of a population of humans. But now, since there are so many humans, ants would not outweigh humans. But, I mean, still pretty freaking close. There are so many ants. And do you know how many ants it takes to weigh the weight of one human being? A fucking lot. And there are, like, billions of humans. So there are, like, hundreds of thousands of trillions of ants. And that grosses me out.
This is now your second
so
ant fact.
know,
People are going to think
I
you're
know.
a weird bug lady.
I love the outdoors. And
yeah, I'm teasing you.
These weird bugs live out there, okay? But I really don't like ants very much. They scare me.
No,
There's
and they
just
like
so many.
In the corner of my eye when they're the big ones, I always think it's a spider, and then I'm like immediately sweaty, and I don't like that either.
They can carry things that are like 2 times their own body weight, which also grosses me out. Like,
it's like, why are you all mini Herculeses?
yeah, it's creepy.
Like, why is that a thing?
And some of them are zombies.
And zombies.
So, yeah. That's fun.
Okay, so since you went with a personal anecdote, I'm going to save my fact for our next episode because today a murder I'm not going to like triangulate my husband or myself too much. So a murder happened next to the restaurant that my husband works at today.
What?
Somebody was shot dead.
Why? How? When? Like, what?
I don't know. We don't know. But the body was left there. And then, so like some of the staff that work at the restaurant will park over there. And because they're using part of the parking lot as their patio right now, it's not available for staff to park. So by the time that some of them were done work today and went to try and get their cars, everything was taped off. There was forensic teams in there.
What?
There was like everything crazy going on. And he's like, I just need to get my car. And he's like, you can't. Like,
oh my goodness.
and he's like, but what? Like,
That's insane. Is it like on the news?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything yet. I keep refreshing it though
crazy.
because they just found the body today.
Yeah. I
Like,
wonder if it was like
somebody
a
was like, "That's a body."
burglary or...
I don't know. It happened at an arena of sorts, and it does have like 2 levels of parking, and it was like the under parking one. I don't know. Maybe
That doesn't
something's
sound like-
maybe drug related. I don't know.
That sounds like a personal vendetta.
It's spooky because
That is
no one
so
heard
spooky.
it.
Wow.
And then Kevin like left work, and there's like tons of cop cars. There's caution tape everywhere. There's a forensic team pulling in, and I'm like, he's like, "Did you hear about this?" I was like, "No."
That's crazy.
And I keep refreshing my Twitter feed because I follow the RCMP on there, and it's not coming up. So I'm like, "What? Why? And it was a male. I know the victim was a male, so it's not related to this crazy younger women that I've mentioned going missing, and the sub-cities around me. So Yeah,
That's
spooky. I learned that today.
Insane. And now,
I mean, it's not about bugs, but it is about murder.
and it's so close.
As this is a murderless crimes episode this week,
Yeah, we had to.
I
add a
had
little.
to mention at least one murder.
Well, now I need some wine. What
Yes.
kind of wine are we drinking?
I'm finishing up a glass of white, and then I will be joining you really shortly here. I didn't drink as quickly as I normally do. So today we are drinking a Pinot Noir. It is a super fun name, winery. It's called Three Ghosts. And, that's very fitting since we are a true crime, paranormal, all things spooky podcast. So Sierra picked this one out because it is something she can actually find over in Tennessee.
And did you find it too?
Yes.
Good.
And I'm really excited to drink the sangria. I'm not sure if you'll like this one. I'm curious to know if you'll like this one. Because Sierra and I were supposed to record yesterday. Long story short, but I had already had a glass of it, so I've already tried it, and I liked it. It's a little,
It smells
more
dry.
of a dry red than I would typically drink, but it's not bad. So specifically with Pinot Noirs, they are the oldest grape varietal, or at least one of the oldest grape varietals in the world. The top producing country is Germany. So hello to all of our German listeners. Hopefully you're also drinking a glass of Pinot Noir. And it's a rich wine with a vintage flair. It's fruit forward, ripe with cherry and berry subtle notes. So it makes the sangria recipe that Sierra picked for next week perfect to go with it. And you'll have to tune in next week to see. So yeah, that's all I got for you.
Did you read the back of it?
No. What does it say?
Terroir driven, inviting, seductive. That's it.
Ooh.
However, I'm also going to tell you what I thought it said when I suggested this. Terror driven, inviting, seductive. And I was like,
I like that
hell yeah.
better. I like that better.
Yeah.
And I love that Sierra always has the glass or the bottle next to her desk because she can show us and read us the backs of the bottles it's fun. It's spooky.
It is.
Oh, sorry. It's Three Ghost Vine.
Yeah.
I missed the vine part. My bad. Okay. I've been calling it Three Ghosts this whole time. That's probably why when I went to find it at the liquor store, they looked at me like I was nutty.
I actually don't hate this one.
Mind it?
Yeah, it's definitely dry, but it doesn't taste like other dry red wines. I don't know.
It's not as tart as that would normally be.
I'm
drinking a trash mixture of my Bodacious and energy drink because I was going to die otherwise.
Yeah. I like to think I like this one because the grapes come from Germany and I'm German, so.
There you go. And maybe as we've done the show, we're now, this is episode 14.
Wow.
You are. You're expanding your palate to sound as douchey as possible, but it's true. I always struggle between being the most pompous person ever when I talk about wine to sounding like I know nothing about wine. Yeah. There's no in between. I haven't found it yet if it exists. So I had a longer wine segment last week, so I kept it short and sweet so I could tell you about this nightmare fuel today.
I am so excited.
The case so like I said, we're doing murderless crimes today. This is another new category that Sierra added to our mix because we're still working through them.
So many scandalous.
We're going to be working through them for the next 6 months.
All right.
Or at least the next 3 months because...
I think we're halfway, yeah.
Yeah, because we're halfway at this point.
There's just so many scandalous things that happen in the world that I was like, you know what?
That didn't fit into any of those categories.
Yeah.
So, yes, Sierra and I have added conspiracies, cults, and now murderless crimes. So, I will say, however, though, that there is the mention of one murder. Not the one that I mentioned that happened next to my husband's work today. But it's related to the perpetrator in this case, but not the victims whose story I'm focusing on. So Sierra can't call me out when I get to that part of the episode.
I probably will anyway.
Yeah, right? It's like I purposefully misunderstood the assignment so that I could do this case.
Yeah.
And I waited a little while to do this case. I was actually going to do it as our bonus episode for our patrons. However, I hesitated because another podcast had covered it a couple months ago, and I was like, I don't want to be like tailing them or anything like that. And like all podcasts say, we don't get together in one room and talk about what we're going to cover.
Right.
So I'm sure we're not the only podcast that you listen to, especially not true crime, because, you know, like us, we just can't get enough. Mm-hmm. So yes, I waited a little while, and now you guys get it, and it fits this category. So it's perfect. Everything happens for a reason, right?
Exactly.
And with that long-winded intro, we'll dive in. So today, I am telling you about Colleen Stan. You will inevitably know this case.
Sounds familiar.
It is infamous, but also so fucked up, and I've always wanted to cover it. So we will dive in. So Colleen Stan was born on December 31st, 1956, to her mom, Evelyn, and her dad, Jack, and she was to be the eldest of what would soon be 3 girls in the family. They were born and raised in Riverside, California. From a young age, where our wine is from, how fitting. Not Riverside, California, but California. From a young age, Colleen displayed creative talents. Her niche specifically was poetry, and I relate. Love poetry. Mm-hmm. She was a smart girl, but school really wasn't her thing, and she dropped out of high school when she was 16. So keep in mind the times that we're dealing with. It wasn't as big of a deal,
right,
to start working at a younger age. She began dating an older man during this time of her life, and they fell in love. She did eventually run off and get married, and they were off living their life for about a year, but unfortunately the marriage crumbled. They did get divorced, and she moved back to her family's home in California. So just from what I gathered about what she's kind of said about her family and just kind of the dynamics that had gone on, it doesn't feel like she was particularly close with her family. Like, it was like she was always just like a runaway girl, just trying to chase like a next adventure or like be like off with her love. And she did end up meeting a couple with a young baby that she befriended and like got very close with. She would often babysit for them, stuff like that, and they eventually ended up buying a home together where it would be in more than enough space for them to have their family and Colleen to have her own space in Eugene, Oregon.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's independent, doing her own thing. So keep in mind she's about like 18, 19 at that point. When Colleen was 20 years old, she wanted to surprise a friend back home in California for her birthday. On the evening of May 19th, 1977, she was hitchhiking to go and surprise her friend, and her friend was in Westwood, California. From where she was now in Oregon. They had previously lived in California, like I said, so she was going to go celebrate and kind of surprise her and just kind of get away from the crampedness of her new living situation, we'll say. She was fairly comfortable getting around hitchhiking. Keep in mind, this is the 70s. That was very common.
Right.
Also a bad idea because it was the time of serial killers, Ted Bundy. We're just saying.
Less media. They didn't know.
If you haven't listened to every one of our episodes and this is your first episode of Twisted, I don't even think we said this is Twisted and Uncorked, but we like to throw a little life lesson in every one of our episodes. And I'm going to go with life lesson, just don't hitchhike.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not victim blaming, and this was the time that she was living in. So she was comfortable getting around this way at this time. She had gone between her husband's home or her ex-husband's home to California and vice versa. And so she was just comfortable getting around hitchhiking. And she had actually turned down 2 other rides at this point that had offered or stopped for her that she kind of got the heebs from. One was a group of all 20-year-old boys, which, you know, only girl in that situation,
no
not a good situation. And one, I think, was like an older gentleman, and she was just kind of like, no thanks. So when this couple pulled up in a blue minivan around the same age as her, like in their 20s kind of thing, with a baby, she was like, these are like the people I live with, basically.
Right.
So why wouldn't you trust these people? So the person driving the vehicle was a 23-year-old man named Cameron Hooker. He was a lumber worker at the time, and his wife Janice, who was 19 years old, was holding their baby girl in the passenger seat. which I meant to look this up because I read it on multiple occasions that she was holding her baby in the passenger seat, and I'm like, were car seats not a thing?
77. I
meant to look this up. I feel dumb, but I'm
No,
just
it's
like,
okay,
I thought that
because
was weird.
I have looked into it specifically because I am a mom, and I don't think that they were, / if they were, it was literally just like a baby bed
seat.
that you put, like, there's no straps or anything like that. Because even I remember, and I'm only
there was only
27.
waist seat belts at that time. Yeah,
right. Like, we jumped around the car all the time. Like, I was never in a seatbelt or a car seat when I was a child, and that was okay. I mean, like, my parents got pulled over for speeding or for this or for that, but never for endangering children like we would now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now hitchhiking and holding your baby in a passenger seat is weird.
Yeah.
Back then, not so much. Good to know. Because I was like, why? Why is she holding? But it's hard to, like, when you do cases that are a little bit older, it's like you have to put yourself there.
Right.
Like if you haven't listened to our most recent bonus episode and you're not a patron, I covered Kristen Smart this month, and I had to, like, put myself in the 90s.
Right.
So it's an important part of telling a story. So this is a almost summer evening, hitchhiking to California, so it's got to be good weather. She hops in the car. They're chit-chatting about where she's going, why she's going there. She lets them know that she was going to surprise a friend for her birthday. Thank you so much for picking me up, blah, blah, blah. They were like, we're just doing, like, a little bit of sightseeing and stuff and just kind of getting out of the house from having the baby, blah, 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 because it was their first child. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned that they wanted to go and see these ice scapes. So Colleen's ice caves.
Okay, I was like, I don't know what an ice scape is. Are there sculptures just in California?
No, I'm reading my notes, and I guess it auto-corrected whatever I typed or when I was doing spell check. Mm-hmm. To scapes.
Okay.
But as soon as I read it, I'm like, that's not right. Ice caves.
Got it.
Guys, don't trust word blindly when it gives you a suggested word to whatever the fuck you typed. And she was like, sure, cool. Like, she's an adventurous girl. She's like, I'm on my way there. I also don't really have a say in where you go. You're doing me a favor. So yeah. They start veering off towards this more remote area, like going up the mountain towards these caves. So she's like, whatever, cool. They keep chit-chatting, and he mentions that he needs to grab gas before they get all the way there. So they pull off at the next exit and grab gas. At the gas station, Colleen got out to use the washroom. And while she was in there, she heard a little voice in her head telling her to run. She didn't know why she was getting this feeling. Like I said, she had already turned down 2 rides at this point in her journey because she didn't feel safe. These people didn't give her a bad vibe at all when she got in the car, so why is she having these feelings? She's like, you're just being paranoid. Kind of pushed it down.
Hey, so I know that you're not far along in Grey's Anatomy, and I don't want to give any spoilers. However, there is a part in a recent episode where people who we have already seen die whisper from death into other people's ears about how to do a surgery or something like that. And it's creepy, but also, like,
makes you
what if
cry.
Those gut feelings you have are people /
Is one of them Derek?
aliens?
Because I heard that he comes back from an episode.
Everybody who has died comes, well, every main character that has died comes back for an episode.
So, like, Mark,
death.
George.
Yes.
Lexi.
Yes.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
All the people that died in the shooting.
Death. Not yet. But Mark, Lexi, George, Derek. I think that's it right now. But they all talk about how they give people ideas and hints by whispering in their ears, and then the people think that it was their own idea because they just hear it in their head. And that just made me think, like, what if she had someone in her life that was
like
looking
a guardian
out for her?
angel?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Maybe it was a guardian angel, Colleen. Yeah. But that brings me to life lesson of this story number 2. Don't ever doubt that voice in your head.
Yes, never,
even
ever,
if it
ever.
turns out to be wrong later, it could be turning out to be right.
Everything
just listen to your gut
happens
feeling
for a reason.
Yes,
if you feel
and
that
human instincts, they're evolved from our ancestors.
Yeah.
They've dealt with this shit.
They are
just
for
listen to that
protecting
gut.
you.
Yes. Listen to that gut feeling. I learned that in evolutionary psychology, that like feeling is literally like subconscious fear instincts, and it comes from that point of our life where we always had to be like alert.
Yeah, I learned that in one of my cultural anthropology classes about how they, we were studying people from like, before they were people. Homo sapiens and, the previous people.
People like, before they were people.
Pretty much.
What the fuck were they?
They were cavemen. Yes. And women.
And women. And or neither and or both. Who knows?
We were actually discussing gender roles back then, so it was a big thing. Anyway, I agree with you.
Class debate.
Yes.
So don't not listen to that gut feeling, guys.
Yes.
It's there for a reason. So she's like, I'm being silly. She gets out of the bathroom and she walks back to the car. They start driving again in the same direction that they were before, to these supposed ice caves / scapes, whatever the fuck that means. And once they arrived, Janice got out of the car with the baby and started to walk towards what looked like a creek that was feeding out of there. And then Cameron, who also got out of the car, got into the back seat abruptly and slid in beside Colleen. He grabbed the back of her hair, held a knife to her neck, and told her not to scream.
The fuck? There's a baby! Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, that's not going to be the first time this angers you about children in this story. So
I have heard of many couples who kill. But with a baby? Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. So while he's holding this knife to her neck, he tells her to put on this helmet-like thing. And it is what he describes as a head box. It weighs about 20 pounds, and it fits to the shape of her head, clasping like a box around her neck and locking. So she literally just had this box on her head. It blocked out all sound, all light, and prevented the flow of fresh air. So, like, anybody that's claustrophobic, I'm going to give you a trigger warning now. It was hard for me, and I'm not even that claustrophobic. So, and what I got when I read this, I kind of got that feeling of the Cleveland kidnappings when Castro would put that gross motorcycle helmet on the girls in the basement, and like they couldn't breathe because it was so tight. So picture like a motorcycle helmet, but a box that goes around your whole head.
I don't
understand
or like it, but okay.
Whatever this contraption was, it was handmade, and it was specifically meant to go over somebody's head and like lock so that they couldn't take it off. Yikes. So I lost my spot. Panic. Everybody panic. So at this point, they made her lay down on in the back seat, and they drove in God knows what direction, because Colleen can't see at this point. She's terrified. And also keep in mind, she is not living with her family anymore. She's living with friends. And she's gone to visit a friend for a surprise. So her friend doesn't know she's coming.
I'm starting to remember this story now.
Literally the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So Colleen remembers while they were driving smelling food at one point. She thought it was odd, and then all of a sudden the helmet was taken off of her head. She was force-fed a couple bites of food and a little bit of water. Yes, that's right. The couple had pulled over like it was nothing at all that they had a girl that they had just kidnapped in their backseat eating a fucking McDonald's meal.
And I bet the McDonald's employees were like, okay, nice kink.
Nice kink.
Like, they did not give a shit.
I don't think that they went through the drive-thru.
It wouldn't surprise me.
With
people liked to mind their business back then. And they shouldn't have.
Also, yeah, life lesson number 3. Don't mind your business.
No.
Oh, man. And like I said, she was laying down in the backseat this whole time. So the helmet was placed back on her head. She was laid back down, and the couple continued to drive. They drove up for what seemed like forever, but it was likely that they were stalling and waiting for it to get like dark. Because it's May in California. It's good weather. It's light. Like right now, it's April and it's fucking still light out right now.
Can I just say to you, it snowed here last night?
What the fuck?
Right? Like, what is wrong
What
with
is
Tennessee?
Yes. Seriously. You've had the most ass backwards weather.
Yeah, it's very much reminding me every day of how awful our climate is. So, stop polluting, people. Thanks.
Take care of the planet, guys. So, after driving for what felt like forever, they finally ended at their destination at the couple's home of 1140 Oak Street. It was out of sight of the neighbors enough, and it was dark, so no one would see her being led into their house with this fucking box contraption on her head. Wow. She was led from the car, taken inside, and immediately downstairs to the cellar/basement, where Colleen would be subjected to horrifying forms of torture. Cameron was a handy guy who was a lumber worker, and like I mentioned, that box that was on Colleen's head was clearly handmade. Mm-hmm. And fit for said purpose. It was total sensory deprivation. So she was led to this basement cellar and subjected to horrible forms of torture. Because he was so handy, he had contracted a rack. So remember our medieval torture talk last couple weeks, guys? When I say the rack, I literally mean the rack. Like the rolling form, stretching, torture bullshit. However, that's not where Colleen went first. She was just hung from the ceiling by her hands and wrists by chains. She was burned, whipped, and I'm not even going to say what else. I will mention the book that I read yesterday in like 3.5 hours at the end of this podcast, because I would highly encourage you guys to all go go read it. It's $2 and it's amazing. But it does go into depth of some of the things that were done to Colleen. And I mean, Sierra and I aren't PG-13, but we're not a total visual torture
X-rated
person. Yeah. There's some things that happen to her that I don't feel comfortable saying.
Yeah.
So I will paint
Sounds
as good of a
awful.
picture as I can, because this is terrible. And he literally did this, and she passed out from the pain.
Oh.
He left her to hang there for the night. She passed out and came to, and passed out and came to during the torture, and eventually woke up to Janice and Cameron having sex underneath of her chained up body.
Today's episode is presented by The Skin Store. For over 20 years, The Skin Store has been the #1 destination for premium skincare, hair care, and beauty products. With over 8,000 different products from 300 different brands, The Skin Store has you covered for all your hair, cosmetics, supplements, and of course, skincare needs. Find your favorite brands like Elta MD, NuFace, Olaplex, and more all in one place with gifts with every purchase. Right now, The Skin Store is offering our listeners 20% off your next purchase by using the code POD. That's POD, P-O-D, for 20% off your next purchase at skinstore.com/pod.list. Skin Store. Have the confidence to tackle the day ahead.
From this point forward, Colleen would go between the rack and the box. So Colleen was kept in a coffin-like box. It was 3 feet high. So when she was laying in it, it was 3 feet high by 6 feet long by 3 feet wide. So like tiny.
Yeah.
And like me and Sierra are small people. That would be really fucking tight for us. Like,
Yeah.
Not comfortable.
Like not even roll
like
over.
you can't even think about moving.
Yeah.
She was also her wrists were also chained to the box, and the box only at this point covered just her body, and like she was like standing in it, and then the head box was placed back on her head. So she was chained, she had the head box on. However, she had her feet free. So when Cameron went upstairs to leave her for the night, she continuously kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked. So He came downstairs and chained up her feet.
No.
But the position that she was in at this point with the head box on, she was like in tears. She was like, I can't breathe. Like, please, can you take this off my head? Like, I'm having a hard time breathing. This asshole puts something around her midsection and ties it to make it even harder for her to breathe. So, fuck him. And because she was kind of standing in this weird little box and kind of had to like go crouch into it to stand up and like be chained, and mind you, he was moving her around during this because she was still blindfolded / had this head box on.
Right.
And that left her backside and midsection open, and he did strip her naked. And throughout the night, he would come and like touch her back, which is just so fucking gross. And she didn't know if it was because he was trying to scare her, because again, that thing is total sensory deprivation.
Right.
Or if he was trying to make sure that she was still breathing, because she mentioned that she couldn't breathe.
I cannot imagine a spouse ever being okay with something like this. Like, how do they find each other? How do these awful people find each other?
There's a reason for that.
Oh, God.
Which is what we're going to get into now. So, that is Colleen's first night. So now, who are Janice and Cameron? Like I said, Cameron was a lumber worker. Janice was a mom. Nothing wrong with that. And they met when Janice was 15. So like I mentioned, at this point, Janice was 19, Cameron was 23. So they met when they were 15. Janice's family loved Cameron. They got married. So in this young age that they had met and gotten married, this is kind of your first sexual experience. Like you're learning what each other likes, kind of thing, and also kind of learning what you like for the first time because you're with somebody. So Cameron really liked bondage and whips and torture. But the problem with that is that can be consensual and fun for both parties. It happens. Or when it comes to what Cameron liked, which was non-consensual partners, it was rough. So I feel for Janice because she was in love with him, but this is what he liked to do. And Janice grew up in a situation where she didn't get a lot of familial attention. And after these sexual, let's call them adventures together, Cameron was very lovey-dovey. He was doting on her. He was like kind to her. So she kind of tolerated it for that reason. But there were times where he would like tie her to trees in the woods and like whip her. She constantly had bruises. Like it was becoming too much on her, and she really loved Cameron, but she wanted to start a family, and she knew that this sexual appetite of his was not sustainable, especially when she was pregnant.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So the compromise to this was that Cameron would be allowed to have a sex slave, which is exactly what Colleen would be.
Like, okay. So here's the thing, though. Like, there are consensual of those, too. Like, fucking find one.
But
that is consensual.
He's not turned on by the consensual. That's the bad part.
Well, they can pretend.
I know. And it's funny that you should say that, because the way that Cameron learned that he really wanted to try these things was through really dark, like, BDSM porno magazines. Mm-hmm. And they did have ads at that time in those magazines where you could hire people like this.
That's crazy. I did not know that existed back then.
So
he has no fucking excuse.
No, so he thought about that. But then again, he learned that he only likes it when they don't.
Yeah.
So Janice tolerated him for long enough, and she wanted a baby. Ugh. She wanted a kid. She wanted to be a mom. So on the one hand, I'm like, fuck you, Janice, because you let him subject another woman to this pain.
Oh, yeah,
and
no,
I'm
100%
like,
fuck you, Janice. Like, I get it, but you don't have to settle for that.
Yeah, agreed. Ladies, you listening?
Yeah.
So that is exactly what Colleen was. Colleen was kept in a coffin-like box for most of her captivity with the hook, and their last name, remember, is Hooker.
Right.
So that's funny. Whenever I said hookers, the 5-year-old that I am laughed. Mm-hmm. So in my notes, Cameron would untie Colleen and allow her to help him with various tasks. However, they were the weirdest fucking tasks, and she didn't have the head box on when he would untie her or take her out of the box. She was just blindfolded, but she was still naked the entire time. So he would make her do weird shit like crack walnuts, like a shit ton of walnuts out of the shells. Like, why?
Because he's lazy as fuck. What?
He would just make her do like really menial tasks, but like when you're doing those things by hand, it would like hurt. So right. I get it. And she had no other choice. He also got her to help build him things a lot. At this point, he was wanting to build like a little workshop. So in the cellar, they started building under the stairs, like think Harry Potter style, a little workshop for him. And he was constantly building. And in her head, she was either strung up for the ceiling on the rack or helping him do these weird tasks in the basement this entire time.
It sounds like he just needed a polyamorous relationship. Like, fucking find yourself a girlfriend to go along with your wife. It is not that hard.
It was the torture that he liked. It's just fucked up. And so she was like, what are you building now? Like, knowing that this, like, he's built all of these things. Like, good God, what are you building now? Mm-hmm. And he was building the box that Colleen would spend the next 7 years in.
No.
So the box again was coffin-like. It was meant for you to lie down in horizontally. It was double lined. And it was 6 feet wide, 6 feet long by 3 feet wide. So again, pretty tight. Mm-hmm. And this one had a lid on it, and it was double walled, as in, like, to soundproof it. And this box was placed under their bed.
What?
Yes. So, like I said, Cameron and Janice agreed to this sex slave thing. But it's like, if you're going to be keeping a person under your bed, you need to sort out your priorities. Like,
also, it sounds like you just need a sex doll. Like, get yourself a doll and put it under your bed, okay?
Man, oh man. So, again, Colleen was constantly naked, constantly blindfolded, and she was placed in this box. And to make matters worse, before putting this box on her head under the bed, and she was basically suffocating because this is like a tight space, and now it's under a bed. He put earplugs in her ears and then put a device between her legs. That device was meant to send shocks throughout her body. However, that device didn't end up working, so
thank
that's
God.
Good. But again, you're blindfolded, you're in the dark, you're under a bed, you're in a tight space, and now you have earplugs in. Like it's like war torture.
Yeah.
Like, what is he doing? So he's breaking her, is what he's doing. So when she was not strapped to the rack or the box, like I said, she was helping them do strange things. As the years went on, Colleen was allowed more and more freedoms and more time out of the box.
The years. Oh.
Yes. So she was basically their housekeeper at this point. She was helping them cook, clean, and take care of their now 2 daughters. And get this, Janice gave birth to their second daughter on the bed while Colleen was in the box underneath. So that's nightmare fuel.
Jesus.
So now 2 daughters. They also had her stitch macrame and crocheted items that they would then sell at flea markets and stores.
A literal slave.
Literal slave.
Okay.
Yes. And all the while, she was given very little freedom. She was really only let out to help them make stuff or to be abused by Cameron whenever he wanted.
Yeah.
So she actually became really good at crocheting and macrameing, and so they ended up selling a lot. So I guarantee somebody out there has one that was made by Colleen Stan, which is kind of disturbing to think about.
Yeah, big time.
Support your local stores, guys. Don't always think that it's a sex slave, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's an odd thing to think about. The biggest portion of Colleen's fear and torture was that Cameron was a part of what he called the company. It was a large secret organization that had surveillance on her entire family, and the hooker's home at all times.
What?
If she tried to escape, she would be recaptured and brought back. And if she continued to disobey Cameron, that they would hurt her and her entire family. So
wait,
at this
so
point,
like multiple people are involved in this?
no, this is something he made up.
Oh.
So she has now been with this family for years. She's between this torture rack, a box under their bed. She's doing whatever he's asked of her. She's basically naked all the time, other than when she's with children. And she is living in fear of this company that she thinks is going to hurt her family if she tries to leave.
So he like created a secret society, but it doesn't exist.
So he broke her and created a secret society that scared the shit out of her at all times. So in it had been almost a year at this point. I said years. So in January of 1978, Cameron had Colleen sign an official contract that would make her his. It meant, so in the contract, it stated that they were going to start calling her K, like just the letter K.
Did Colleen even start with a K?
No, Colleen started with a C.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Good call, Sierra. Good catch. So they were going to just start calling her K, that she would do everything that Cameron asked of her without question, that she would refer to him as sir or master at all times.
Ew.
Insert gagging noise here. She was to wear a collar, so like literally his property.
Like a fucking
And
dog.
she was not allowed to wear underwear or cross her legs in front of him.
Okay.
So, like, fucking okay. So, she's terrified. She has no way out. She signs this contract. So, at this point, she starts to get a little bit more freedom. She spends less time in the box and more time with the family. So, at this point, their kids know Colleen as Kay the babysitter.
The naked babies.
Well, she's not naked at this point. Like, she's given more freedom. She's allowed to wear clothes, just no underwear and not cross her legs in front of him.
Okay.
So fucked up. So one evening, while she was in the box, sleeping under their bed, she heard a bunch of commotion, and she was taken from the box, led to the car. Cameron instructed her to be quiet and to lay down. They left abruptly towards this mobile home, and the house that they were previously living in was actually a rental home. So not a great place to have slaves that are not willingly there, as landlords can drop by from time to time, and there are neighbors. And this mobile home was in a much more secluded neighborhood, and it was the couple's new home. Like, they didn't have to worry about landlords popping by. So Cameron brought Colleen into the master bedroom and pointed to a large homemade bed frame that he was so proud of. And he was like, look underneath. So she looks underneath, and there's a small entry, like crawl space, into the new box that was built under the bed. Really the same as the old one, but it was built into the bed. And it had a method so that they could cover it, and it wouldn't look like anything was under there.
This is... Oh, God. Okay.
So in 1981, so she was taken in 1977. She signed this bullshit contract in 1978, was given more freedoms after this. However, still she's somebody's property, living in constant fear of this company. And so she's like obviously broken at this point. Like, she is theirs. She was allowed to go jogging. She was allowed to work out in the garden. She was even allowed to go and visit some neighbors from time to time. And the neighborhood all knew her as Kay, the babysitter or the housekeeper to the hookers. It was just normal.
Insane.
So in 1981, there was a long stretch where she really wasn't in the box for very long, other than to really sleep. However, there was a picture of the last girl that Cameron had caused to go missing in view in their home for Colleen to see, as a definite form of a scare tactic. Whether or not she believed in the company, that would be enough to keep her there for sure. But she did very much believe in the company.
Yeah.
The girl was Marie Elizabeth Spinacki. She went missing from Chico, California when she was 19 years old, and her body was never found. So she convinced Cameron to allow her to visit her family at this point. She was like, you can trust me, like, I work for you guys. I am your guys's. I just, like, I really miss my family. So he obliged. However, they needed to stop at the company headquarters in Sacramento on their way there in order to make sure that they knew that Colleen wasn't going to try and escape or try anything funny, and that Cameron was going to go along with her. So, yes, they stayed outside of this headquarters for quite some time. Meanwhile, Colleen is shitting her pants. Like, what's going to happen? What are they going to, like, what do they need? What are they going to ask me?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, they don't need to see you. However, like, the secretary said good luck. So it's like, okay. So she's just like weirded out, scared, like confused, but she's like, at least I get to see my family. So she told her family very little. All that she told them was that her and Cameron, or who she introduced her family to as Michael, were engaged. And keep in mind, they haven't seen her for, at this point, like, I'm bad at math. 77, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
And nobody needs to watch that process. I will cut it accordingly. She could. So they thought maybe she was in a cult or something strange. Mm-hmm. She was wearing tattered clothing. Obviously she was very loyal to this man. She didn't say a whole lot about where she had been or what she'd been doing for the last 5 years. All that they really knew was that she was engaged to this man. So after the 1981 family visit, when they went back home to their mobile home, it was back in the box for Colleen until 1984. She was only allowed out of the box to eat or drink or to be physically or sexually abused. It's almost like he was trying to regain back his power. Like maybe he had let her go a little too much. Maybe she had given her a little too much at this point. And I know that sometimes they just like to keep you on your toes too. So that you're basically in constant fear, or they'll give you like some freedom and then take it away. So it's psychological ploys all around. And this fucker has literally thought of everything. Like,
yeah.
Gross. So at this point, because she had been part of their community as well as their kids' lives, Janice led Colleen, or Kay, around to the neighbors to say goodbye and to say that she was going to be off for a little while, said goodbye to the girls, and then it was literally back in the box for her. So she was only let out, like I said, to eat, drink, or to be abused. And in the evenings, Cameron would recruit her help in building a dungeon.
Oh my god.
So they're in a mobile home. They have a shed in the backyard, and they start digging through the back of the shed into the ground to make an underground dungeon. The entrance would be through the back of the shed, like I said, and that was the only way to get in and out. It was a huge ordeal. It took several nights, like months and months of evenings, for them to basically dig a room that was big enough, lay cement, lay bricks, etc. They then made it so that they would have the option to expand at some point, and Colleen was told that this was going to be her new home. She was obviously a little relieved because it was a lot more space than this box under their bed.
Mm-hmm.
However, it was still not ideal. There were still chains in there that she was strapped to. And Cameron said that he was hoping to get about 4 more girls. And he told Colleen that it was going to be her job to train them once they arrived. And that he was also going to marry Colleen one day and have a child with her as well. And if she was lucky, she might even get a trailer of her own once they had the other girls in the dungeon. The only companionship that Colleen had for this next little bit was really Janice. Janice would come into this dungeon and hang out with her. They studied the Bible together often. And they
fucking
learned...
Bible.
Yeah, I know, right? She's a religious woman after all this.
Okay.
So they became closer and realized that they had more in common than they had originally thought. Cameron even allowed her to go to church with Janice sometimes. They were both being abused, and Janice felt like they did have a lot in common. However, part of the reason that Colleen was put back under the bed in 1981 after her family visit was because Janice was getting jealous. That was another reason. And in their previous agreement, Janice had also not wanted him to have penetrative sex with any of the sex, like with his new sex slave. But that eventually changed after a few years with Colleen too, which I'm sure she wasn't too fussy about.
Yeah.
And the aforementioned, I want to marry you too and have 4 other slave children, girls.
Yeah.
Fuck, he's a psycho. Colleen Stan was kept captive for 7 years, from the years of 1977 to 1984. So like I said, she was in the box for the last 3 years most of the time. Janice, I don't know if she gained a conscience. I don't know if it was their new budding friendship. I don't know if it was like her religion and just feeling the guilt of God on her. I don't know what it was, but Janice eventually told Colleen everything. She told her that Cameron was not in the company, that the company did not exist, and that she was simply a victim of kidnapping, and that she wanted to help Colleen escape.
Wow.
So the following day, while Cameron was at work, Janice dropped Colleen off at the bus station. Colleen's dad wired her money. She again didn't really explain what had happened, but that she was coming home. And she left. They agreed not to turn Cameron in, as Janice said that she wanted to give him a chance to redeem himself.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So this poor woman is even more broken than Colleen ever was.
Yeah.
Janice was the one to turn Cameron in, though, however, 3 months later. And I will say during this 3-month span that on more than one occasion, Colleen had called Cameron just to talk to him. But she also told him that he knew that that everything was a lie. Mm-hmm. And he would like cry and ask her to come back home and stuff. Like, it was weird. But Janice was the one to turn him in 3 months later. Maybe she was back to being abused by him since Colleen wasn't there anymore and she just had enough. Or she saw that he could not be fixed, whatever. Don't really know or care, but she did turn him in. And I wrote in my notes, I don't know how he didn't sooner. He's a goddamn monster, but I guess he was her husband. And the father of their 2 children, so. I know. Janice also told authorities that Marie Elizabeth, I'm not sure what the pronunciation is, including her murder, because like I said, they couldn't find her body, that she had been taken the same way as Colleen. She had been picked up on the side of the road, put in this head box, and taken to their basement and chained up. However, she didn't comply as well, or she wasn't broken as easily, and Cameron shot her in the stomach, and
Jesus,
they disposed of her body. So she testified against him in court for full immunity, which I fucking hate, but whatever.
Don't like that.
I mean, I feel for her in some ways because I've been in an abusive relationship, not to this degree by any means, but I get that like breaking of your spirit. But how can you let this happen to another person?
Yeah, that's
where
the
part I can't wrap my brain. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can't wrap my brain around that part. So, I mean, like, no woman deserves this. If you're in a relationship like this, get the fuck out of there. Like, that's my other PSA for this episode. Like,
yeah, you
can make beautiful babies with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. You can also just go to a fucking doctor and they will impregnate you with a surrogate. So,
not with a turkey baster.
I mean, pretty fucking much, and it would be better than having this man as a husband,
right? But this has been the only person that she's known since she was 15. Like, it's like, it's hard.
It does kind of seem like she was groomed for it, but also,
I agree.
Like, Jesus.
Because he was 19 at the time, right? Like, I think I think definitely a little bit of grooming. And that's exactly what he did with Colleen and how he was able to gain her trust/fear so easily.
I have to know how this trial went, though.
So, Cameron was sentenced to consecutive prison terms totaling 104 years for sexual assaults, kidnapping, and using a knife in the process. I like that was just thrown in there. Like, you know, the whipping and the chains and the burning and the sexual abuse, sure, but
let's just throw everything we can at this man.
Right? And using a knife.
Yeah.
So, originally ineligible for parole until 2023, he had his hearing date moved up 7 years to 2015 by California's elderly parole program. So, he is like 66 years old. He's not elderly. Like, he's old, but he's not like gonna die in prison old. Like, such bullshit. So, on April 16th, 2015, his request for parole was denied. Thank God. Mm-hmm. Hooker will be eligible for another hearing in 2030. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, California officials contacted Colleen and advised her that they were possibly looking into granting Hooker parole this year.
Yeah.
So I signed the petition on behalf of the podcast, and I would encourage you all to do that as well. I will link it in the show notes and on our website. He's served 35 years. He's 66 years old, but that doesn't mean that he's not a danger to society still. He had plans to have a dungeon of sex slaves.
I am honestly...
And he has already killed another woman, so...
I'm honestly surprised that he didn't... That's why I said I want to hear about the trial. I'm surprised he didn't get sentenced with some sort of mental disorder, because it sounds like he has one. Like, he actually thinks this is okay. Like he legitimately thinks that he is able to. He made her sign
that
a
this
paper
is an okay thing.
that
Yeah.
she belongs to. Like, that is not something that stands up in court. You psycho.
And he gets so much more extra too. In the book, he used like a calligraphy pen to write out the contract too. Like,
yeah, it
so
sounds like
extra.
he needs. I mean, he's a fucking awful person, but it sounds like he needs mental help.
I'm sure they would have done an evaluation of some sort before the trial.
Yeah,
to make sure that he was of sound mind.
It does not sound like it.
Yeah, he's definitely not of sound mind, and he definitely should not be released back into the public.
No.
So, I signed this petition. I will link it for everybody. So, Colleen Stan suffered from chronic back and shoulder pain for the rest of her life. Like, she still struggles with this. As a result of her confinement in the cramped spaces and various boxes. She received extensive therapy. She was eventually able to get married, and she had a daughter of her own. Mm-hmm. She joined an organization committed to helping abused women, and she earned a degree in accounting. Colleen Stan and Janice Hooker both changed their names and continued to reside in California. So Colleen has spoken out, like, recently.
Mm-hmm.
So she's still findable, but I don't know what came of Janice or their two daughters, because at that point they would have been like 7 and 8.
Yeah.
Like only about a year apart. And I would be curious to hear what they have to say about Kay the nanny and having found out everything after the bath. But in regards to her resilience during those excruciating years in captivity, Stan told reporters, "I learned that I could go anywhere in my mind." In a similar vein to Janice's compartmentalization of Colleen Stan said, "You remove yourself from the real situation going on and you go somewhere else."
That's insane.
So I'm going to need you to do me a favor and Google Cameron and Janice Hooker, because the only picture on the internet of Janice Hooker, she looks terrifying as shit.
Ew, why did they use that picture?
I just needed your reaction. Right? Doesn't she look terrifying? And he's so gross.
Why is she looking like that? Like what the fuck is she doing?
Yeah, I know. It's scary. So, Sierra, this case is so famously known as the girl in the box.
That is insane.
And I needed to cover it because, one, it's so crazy. 2, Colleen Stan is a fucking hero and so resilient. And I'm so happy that she was able to live a normal life, because 7 years is a long ass time to have your life taken away from you, especially in your 20s. Like, think of what she could have accomplished in that time. So, so horribly sad. And I hope she's doing well wherever she is, and that she doesn't continue to have any more pain, because I have not been confined in a box for 7 years, but I do have horrible neck and back pain, and it sucks. So I wish her nothing but healing and happy and healthy and thriving thoughts.
I don't remember what story I thought this was when I was like, I'm starting to remember, but I've definitely never heard this before. So
what?
Yeah, never. That was great. You did an amazing job. Yeah, never heard that before.
The book that I was talking about, so when you search this case, a lot of the same information comes up over and over and over again, but where I was able to find little things like the couple had sex under her, or that device that he tried to put between her legs, or like some of the things that he had said to her about his plans and her training these new girls.
Yeah.
Ugh. So the book is called The Perfect Victim, The True Story about, The Perfect Victim, The True Story of the Girl in the Box, which Colleen is famously known as. The book is written by Christine McGuire, and she was actually involved in the trial and prosecution of
Wow.
Cameron Hooker. So she was directly involved in the case too. So that's really cool. The book is insanely well written. It has every horrifying detail that I did not want to mention of Colleen's torture, and I know that she called it The Perfect Victim because she was in that position where she, like, no one knew where she was.
Right.
And, like, or, like, maybe if she had extended her stay or if she'd hitchhiked somewhere else. And it's not like during this time you could call somebody on your cell phone and be like, hey, I'm going to stay here for an extra day or whichever.
Right.
Like, communication wasn't as readily available as it is today. So, again, thank the aliens for the cell phones, guys.
Yes.
Because, like Sierra said in our first ever episode of Twisted and Uncorked, thank everything for cell phones. So I would also encourage that you watch any talks, public speeches that Colleen does. I'll link a few of them. She speaks about this in such a steady way, and she doesn't have any hate or anything in her heart. Like, she's just literally thrived from it. And I find that really admirable, because in this instance, it can be easy to hate somebody or to feel angry or to feel like you were robbed of 7 years of your life, which you were. But she's just a really beautiful person. So I'll link a few of those for you guys to watch, because it'll just give you an idea of who she was. So yeah, that is Colleen Stan.
That's insane.
And I will give a shout out, because I waited until I covered the case, or like wrote my notes before I listened to Morbid cover it. I didn't listen to it when I saw that Ash had covered it, and I waited for that reason.
Right.
But that's where I heard about the book. So a shout out to Ash from Morbid for the book recommendation. It is $2 on Kindle books. So, I mean, even if you can't afford the physical copy, everybody can afford $2. And Christine McGuire put a lot of effort into writing that book and interviewing everybody. So it's a really good read.
Awesome.
I was leaving it till the end because I didn't want somebody to be like, oh, okay, and go and buy it.
Yeah.
You gotta listen to me tell the story first.
Of course.
So yeah, that is my murderless crime case. And I'm sorry about that.
That was great. However, again, I did not expect something so dark for murderless crimes.
You know what? I probably
you
won't
outdid
go that
yourself
dark again, but yeah, I had to do it, and I delayed my research because it was hard to read.
Yeah,
I think that's why I ripped off that Band-Aid of a book, because I'm just like,
yeah.
And Sierra and I are huge book people, and we like to read where we can for cases.
Yes.
So. Support authors, guys, especially now. Keep reading. Bookstores are closing everywhere in Vancouver. I was reading an article about it. It made me really sad. Anyways.
That's awful.
Yeah, I've given too many PSAs for this episode. So we will leave it by saying we love you guys. Thank you for listening. I hope I didn't give you nightmares. And I hope that all of my safety tips are well absorbed.
Yes.
Always listen to that gut feeling.
Don't hitchhike.
And if that gut feeling is telling you something really scary and you want to share that with us about an experience that's happened to you, you can write that into twistedanduncorked@hotmail.com.
Yes,
for
please.
our listeners' story volumes that we're hoping to do.
Yeah, I still have 2 more stories that I have to tell. So
yeah, Sierra just keeps having shit happen to her.
I do.
So yeah, we want to know what's going on in your lives, what's spooky. Even if you've had like a sleep paralysis situation, those really suck. We want to know about it. Anything twisted you want to share. Also a reminder that we are an indie podcast and everything we do ourselves. So if you really want to help us out, you can leave us a rating and review. You can tell a friend about our podcast and tell them to listen. Or if you want to go above and beyond, you can support us on Patreon, where we've got lots of fun stuff waiting for you.
Yes, we
like
do.
a shit ton of bonus content.
So much.
If you signed up today, there's like 4 months of nonsense there for you.
Yes.
We've got bloopers and behind the scenes. We've got bonus episodes. We've got our monthly Bitch and Wine segment where we just talk nonsense and lots of fun. You guys can get to know us better and unlock some super fun series recaps and movie nights.
Yes.
And hang out with us every month because we couldn't do the show without you, and we want to learn who's listening to us. That's fun. It's part of the fun for us. And you should be following us everywhere on social media. You can find all of those links on our link tree, linked everywhere.
Yeah, we have pictures for each of our episodes, so you definitely want to do that.
Yes, exactly. And we also have all of our sources and blog photos on our website, too, if you want to check that out. And that's all, I think.
I think so.
Reminder to save a glass of that beautiful Pinot Noir for your sangria recipe next week. And Sierra's murderless crime, that, as she has prefaced, will be less of a bummer than mine was.
A lot more fun.
We'll have fun next week. But this week, stay safe. And as always,
keep it twisted.
That is so fucked up. It's fucked up. So fucked up. It is just so damn fucked up. That's fucked up.
This is That's So Fucked Up, a podcast about cults, murder, and other fucked up stuff. Like really, really fucked up stuff. He cut off her nipples, tore out her heart, tied it to a rope, and hung it on the wall.
This cult has everything: magic, rituals, child sacrifice, cloaks, daggers, and even a little arms dealing.
The fucking sharks ate Mark under the dinghy.
Strangled him to death so violently that he ended up asphyxiating on his own vomit.
Ugh. We're your hosts. I'm Ashley Richards.
And I'm Cameron Dexter.
Join us every Fucked Up Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
And everywhere you listen to podcasts.
That's fucked up.